Arc Raiders can be a brutal game. Going topside to gather resources leaves you vulnerable versus not only the Ark but also other humans, as the loot is scarce and your presence is largely unwanted. Survival in this harsh environment can be quite the challenge, and it can sometimes even feel too daunting to know how to approach it. But there are definitely some things to know that will make your journey much easier. Some things that will really elevate your game. Dr. Pooplove here, and today I want to talk about 7 things I wish I knew sooner in Arc Raiders. Starting with the thing that can perhaps take the most time for you to wrap your head around, and that is that in this game you need to be more careful with combat and even avoid it if you can. This is a hard thing to get used to, especially because us gamers have been programmed in most games to engage and fight everything we see. But this game is different. In Arc Raiders, you are meant to feel weak, to feel small in this harsh and unforgiving world. Your primary directive is to safely extract with the loot that you carry on your back, and as such, every time that you decide to engage in combat is a risk that you are going to lose everything you have. Even seasoned veterans and pro tryhards are going to lose their stuff every now and again, especially if they decide to engage everything they see. So, at least at the beginning, it's best to be cautious and avoid combat at least as much as you possibly can. Personally, I can attest that the majority of my deaths come from when I have engaged in combat that I otherwise could have avoided, and I didn't know when to simply just disengage and run away. Often, I would allow myself to fight and get distracted by any arc enemy I saw, and that would often allow a team to come in and use that distraction as an advantage to wipe me out. Other times, I decided to stay and linger around and fight for too long in a single place instead of just running away. Adopting this mindset of caution and avoidance is definitely going to allow you to survive more and extract more often. Now, speaking of extraction, let's talk about how that works. In most cases, you can extract through an elevator, but you also have subways and even hatches. For the elevators and subways, you need to call these and wait a good amount of time for them to arrive. During this time, the alarms blare, alerting everyone nearby that someone is extracting, and so it can be very dangerous as you leave yourself open to be hunted. Your best bet in this case is not to stand out in the open, but rather try to find a bit of a hiding spot a little ways away where you can constantly check your back and just monitor the area. I like to use this type of corner in the subway stations, for example, as in this spot I'm safe to kind of keep checking around each corner and my back isn't exposed. Now, once the doors start opening and if the coast is clear, you can definitely hop right in and you need to hit that button. But sometimes things may go south, and even if you do get downed, don't give up, because you can still extract even while downed. When you get downed, you're able to crawl around and you even have a good amount of health in this state, so don't give up, crawl to the exit, press that button, and try to get out. Anyone else inside will also extract with you. This is a cool feature that I really like about this game. But now let's talk about something you're going to be spending a lot of time doing, and that is living inside the menus. The main menu you have to deal with is your inventory. This is not only what you're going to take with you, but also the stash that you have at your base. You can expand your stash, and definitely should, as that can fill up fast, but you also need to pay attention to the menu items available on each item. You can do things like upgrade your guns, giving them better stats, and that can be especially helpful for some of the more common weapons. You will also have to repair these as they do degrade with use. Now, you have your backpack where, as you're exploring around topside, you can add loot to it, and you also have quick use slots where you will want your medical supplies and your throwables. You can also wear an augment, which will give you extra backpack slots, as well as will impact your safe pocket, which is a sacred place where you can store your most precious items. Your ass. You're hiding stuff in your ass. And these are the items you will not lose even if you get knocked out. A great thing to keep in your safe pocket are things like crafting recipes, rare items, or raider hatch keys, which will allow you to extract almost immediately at any of the hatches on the map. But continuing on with the menus, you also have your traders where you can buy items and get quests. You have your workbenches where you can craft your own supplies with resources you've gathered. And you also have a skill tree where you can put points in to upgrade your stats. Now, as you begin to amass resources resources that you bring back with you from the game, these menus are critical for allowing you to stay competitive in the game even when you lose your stuff. If you get knocked out in a match and lose everything, you can essentially buy your gear back from the traders, or better yet, craft them from your workbenches as soon as you've leveled them up. Collecting crafting recipes in games and leveling up your workbenches allows you to craft more things and can blunt the absolute trauma that is losing your stuff in a raid. And don't forget Scrappy, your trusty rooster who passively just gives you stuff after every raid. Level that guy up as soon as you can. Another thing to be aware of that I totally didn't realize is you can even craft some items in game, especially things like shield generators and medical supplies. Remembering this can be critical should you run out. But also a mini tip here is there's also some things you can find in game that you can use right away. Things like power cells which you can use to charge your shields. Now, as far as the skill tree in the menus, I think that conditioning is definitely what I would prioritize, especially anything that's going to increase your stamina, because you are constantly going to be needing to manage your stamina in this game, and having better stats will make that much easier. But that brings me to the next tip, which are some movement tips, things that allow you to help manage your stamina and speed in the game. The first is one you probably will hear all the time, but it still needs to be repeated, and that is if you unequip your weapons, you'll actually be able to sprint faster. So anytime you are on the move, unequip those guns so you can make better use of your stamina. That being said, you are a bit clunky in this game and it does take a while to equip your weapons. So you do kind of want to be ready with your guns if you find yourself engaged in a combat scenario. What I typically like to do is when I'm traversing outdoors or out in the open, I unequip my weapons so that I can sprint faster. But when I go indoors, I don't need to move quite as fast, so I will equip a weapon at the ready just in case anyone is lurking around a corner. Now, another way to get the most out of your stamina is to slide and to slide often. While some movements such as dodge rolls deplete your stamina, it will actually increase when you are sliding. So slide as much as you possibly can. Another thing that's going to save you from time to time is knowing that when you fall from a high elevation, you can minimize that fall damage or completely prevent it by perfectly timing a dodge roll upon landing. Get used to this because it's going to help you more than you know. Now, the next thing that is critically important in this game is to plan ahead. Before stepping out into a raid, you need to actually have a little bit of a plan and pack your gear accordingly. Having a shield and a weapon are essential, of course, but you also need to make sure you're bringing the right type of ammo for your guns and that you have enough of it. Each weapon has a certain ammo type that it needs, and these are going to be effective versus certain things. For instance, heavy ammo is needed to deal with the heavy armor plating on the arc enemies. Of course, you also don't want to run out of ammo. I came for the Queen's loot, for instance, and I didn't bring enough bullets, and I also didn't even have an escape plan, so I ultimately had to abandon quest. Having at least 2 stacks of ammo is typically going to be good when going topside, as that should keep you pretty stocked up when you do run into trouble. You also want to have something to charge your shields and something to give you health when you get into those fights. It's also good to just have a general plan of what you want to do before going topside as well, whether it be trying to complete one of your quests or searching for specific loot in order to upgrade something. While things don't always go according to plan, you should still always plan ahead. Now, the next thing I wish I knew sooner was how much you really need to pay attention to cues in this game, both audio and visual. Sound is an absolutely huge aspect of this game. The extraction points make sounds when being activated, the arc makes sounds when they're nearby, gunfire makes sounds, people sprinting make sounds. You just need to have your ears perked in order to understand what's going on and what dangers lurk nearby. Now, the same thing goes for visual cues. If you see birds flying, it's because a player was nearby. When you're firing upon someone, you see blue sparks, and that means you are currently taking down their shields. When you see someone's flare go up in the air, that means a player has been downed, and that means there's activity going on right underneath. Even things like these yellow spots on the bastions are a mini cue to you to let you know that that is a weak spot. Being hyper aware and attuned to these audio and visual cues are going to help you out so much. But now let's talk about one of the most daunting parts of this game, and that is the PvP. It's one thing to learn the patterns of an enemy AI, but humans are unpredictable. and facing other players successfully can be the biggest hurdle to overcome, especially with how fleeting sometimes these encounters are and how high of stakes it is to lose all your stuff. It can be hard to get the hang of it. And now, this is actually something I haven't really mastered yet. In fact, I'm still pretty bad. But once I do get the hang of it, I will be making my own video to share my tips. But there are still a few ways that I have used to help practice for these encounters. The first is to take advantage of the practice range. While this isn't a live action area where you're going to be facing off against real people or real arc, this is an area that you can use to try and test out your various weapons, allowing you to really just get the feel for how each weapon handles and even how different weapon levels differ. I really recommend spending a good time in here just firing around and testing things out. There's even actually a little secret parkour course in here that will allow you to test out the Torrent LMG a little bit early. You just have to hop around, and this can actually be a good way to understand the parkour as well, as you can climb onto ledges and hop from area to area. Of course though, the practice range isn't against real people, so the other thing that I like to do in order to practice my PvP skills is to go into a raid with one of the free loadouts. The free loadouts give you basically a starter kit, just gives you free stuff that wasn't already in your stash. This allows you to kind of go into a raid with very low stakes, because if you die, you will lose it, but it was all free stuff anyways, and won't actually impact your stash. Now, what I do is I will go into a raid with this free loadout, and I will just purposefully seek out PvP encounters in order to practice. And one thing I found useful was doing this on the night raids, because I did find that oftentimes you can find some better weapons scattered around the map on these to allow you to practice with those as well, because the free loadout is just going to give you some random gray weapon to play around with, so you might get a bad luck of the draw. Certainly if you do find something cool, you can try to extract, but at least in this case the pressure is largely off. At least you know you came in with a desire to just fight PvP and get some experience. But you can also use these free loadouts as just a way to kind of build up if you've been dying a lot, and use it as a way to go in with a little bit of lower stakes. The only thing to note here is that if you do use one of these, you can't store anything up your butt in your safe pocket. Now, once you get a good solid enough arsenal, you don't really have to use the free loadout because you probably will have enough resources from grinding on your own, but at least in those early stages, this is a good way to practice. And then there's also another kind of unconventional way to get better at PvP. Now, since this doesn't have a dedicated PvP mode, you might want to try playing some modes in other games that are somewhat similar. One of the ones I've been practicing more with is The Last of Us Factions. This has a similar vibe to Arc Raiders with an emphasis on survival and scarce resources, and it's actually one of my favorite PvP experiences ever. It's actually one of the reasons I love Arc Raiders so much. Another one you can try is Star Wars Battlefront 2, is that game was developed by DICE, and Embark is made up of a lot of ex-DICE devs, so the combat there definitely has some similarities that can just help you get the hang of how guns feel. Since you don't have a PvP arena mode in Arc Raiders, doing this can help you get a little bit better. But so here we have it. I hope that these have helped you feel a little bit more confident in getting into this game, because it is so fun and it is so worth it. If you want more videos like these, let me know down in the comments. Thank you to my YouTube members for joining the Bowel Movement, but otherwise, so long, Pooper Troopers.